I told a man his town was dying. It was my 3rd week here. I was sitting at the counter. Same diner, same stool, same biscuits and gravy. And I was talking to the man who bought me breakfast, the one who doesn't want thanks. And I said, I love this place, but I don't know how it survives. The main street's half empty. The factory closed. The kids leave and don't come back. It's beautiful, but... And I trailed off. Like dying was too cruel to say out loud. And he looked at me, not angry, not defensive, just sad for me, like I was the one who didn't understand. And he said, you think a town is buildings. A town is people. The buildings don't matter. And I sat there with gravy on my shirt and my foot in my mouth, and I realized I'd been looking at this town all wrong. Not just wrong, backwards. I'd been measuring it by what it had lost, and everyone here was measuring it by what it still had. In this video, I'm showing you the 5 things I got wrong about small-town America. Not because I'm embarrassed, though I am, but because I think you might be looking at it wrong too. And not just outsiders, Americans. People who grew up here, left, and now look back with nostalgia or pity or both. I think you're measuring it by the wrong thing, and I think the man at the counter was right. But the moment that changed everything, the moment I stopped seeing a dying town and started seeing a living one, is the thing that happens at the post office on Saturday morning. Because that's where you realize this town isn't shrinking, it's choosing. And once you see what they're choosing, you can't unsee it, and you'll never look at a small town the same way again. Wrong thing number 1. The empty storefront. I walked past this building every day for 2 weeks. For lease, dusty windows, faded paint, and I thought, another business failed. Another family left. Another nail in the coffin. That's what the news would say. That's what the city papers write. Rural decline. Economic struggle. Brain drain. Quote. But I asked Darlene, because I asked Darlene everything, what happened to that shop? And she said, oh, that's Mrs. Henderson's now. Her husband passed and she couldn't keep the house. The town bought the building, fixed it up, and gave her the apartment upstairs. No rent, just gave it. And I stood there like she'd told me gravity was optional. The town didn't see an empty storefront. They saw a widow who needed a home, and they didn't wait for a government program. They didn't wait for a grant. They just did it. The building that looked like failure from the outside was actually a gift from the inside. And I walked past it for 2 weeks thinking, decline. They were thinking, Mrs. Henderson needs a kitchen. Quote. I was looking at the building, they were looking at the person. And that's not decline, that's something else entirely. Wrong thing number 2. The closed factory. You can't miss it. It's the biggest building in town. 3 stories. Brick. Smokestack that hasn't smoked in 15 years. And I thought, that's the jobs. That's the economy. That's the reason the kids leave. I looked at that factory, and I saw a gravestone. But I asked the man at the gas station, the one with the flag decal on his truck, what happened to the factory? And he said, closed in '09, 200 jobs. But we turned it into something. I said, into what? And he said, community center, youth sports, the gym, the food bank, the veterans hall. We didn't have the money to knock it down, so we used it. Then I drove past that factory the next day, and I looked closer, and he was right. The windows that used to show assembly lines now show basketball courts. The loading dock that used to ship products now ships food boxes. The office that used to fire people now hires volunteers. I saw a gravestone. They saw a skeleton with good bones, and they built a body around it, not with money, with weekends, with hammers, with the understanding that a building is just a box, and what matters is what you put inside it. If you're watching this and thinking, I had no idea a closed factory could say this much about a country, that's exactly why I make these videos. I don't show Americans the small-town America the news shows you. I show you the small-town America that actually exists. The one where empty buildings become homes, where closed factories become community centers, where decline is just a word people use when they don't know what they're looking at. If you're on the telly right now, grab your phone and search G-Day America. Hit subscribe, not for me, for the algorithm, so it shows this to the American who's been told their town is dying, and the Australian who thinks they understand. I promise the next one will surprise you even more. Wrong thing number 3. The kids who leave. I asked the hardware store woman, the one who explained the porch flags, do the kids come back? And she looked at me like I'd asked if water was wet. Some do, some don't. But the ones who don't? They send money. They send food. They send their kids for the summer. They don't leave. They just stretch. And I said, stretch? And she said, a town isn't a fence. It's a web. The kids go to college. They get jobs. They move to the city. But the web holds. They call. They visit. They send money when someone's house burns down. They show up when someone's sick. They don't live here, but they still belong here. And I thought about my own town in Australia. When kids leave. They go to Sydney, to Melbourne, to London. And they don't look back. Not because they don't care. Because the web breaks. Because distance in Australia is different. Because home becomes a memory, not a place you still serve. But here, the web holds. The kids who left still pay for the football team's new jerseys. The grandmother who moved to Florida still sends her social security check to the church. The man who got a job in Atlanta still drives home for the county fair. They stretched. They didn't break. I saw a brain drain. They saw a web that stretches but doesn't break. And I was wrong. Again. Wrong thing number 4. The old buildings. I looked at the courthouse and thought, they can't afford to fix it. I looked at the church and thought, the roof's going to cave in. I looked at the high school and thought, these kids deserve a new building. I looked at everything old and saw neglect. But I asked the old fella from the porch, the one who waves at every car, why don't they fix the courthouse? And he said, because it's ours. The cracks, the leaks, the faded paint. We fixed it in '87. We'll fix it again. But we don't tear it down because it's ours. And I said, but a new building would be better. And he said, better for who? A new building is just a box. This building is where my daddy got married, where my mama worked, where I voted for the first time. You can't build that. You can only keep it. And I looked at that courthouse again, and I saw the cracks. But I also saw the American flag, crisp and new, flying above it. And I realized, the flag isn't flying despite the cracks. It's flying because of them, because this building has earned the flag. It has history. It has memory. It has generations. And you don't tear that down because the paint is faded. You repaint it. I saw neglect. They saw inheritance. I saw a building that needed fixing. They saw a building that needed keeping. And I was wrong. Again. Wrong thing number 5. The quiet. I come from Australia. We have quiet. We have the outback. We have places where you don't see another person for 100 kilometers. So I thought I understood quiet. I thought small-town American quiet was the same thing. But it's not. Australian quiet is absence. It's the sound of no one being there. It's the loneliness of distance. It's beautiful, but it's empty. Small-town American quiet is presence. It's the sound of everyone being there, but softly. It's the porch light on Mrs. Henderson's window. It's the dog barking 2 streets over and someone yelling, "Shut up, Buster." It's the pickup truck idling at the stop sign because the driver saw someone they know and they're talking through the window. It's the football stadium lights glowing in the distance on a Friday night, even though you can't hear the crowd. You know they're there. I asked Darlene, because of course I did, what do you hear when it's quiet? And she said, I hear us. We're just not yelling. And I sat there, in that diner, at 6 a.m., with the regulars around me, and I listened, and I heard it. The coffee pouring, the newspaper turning, the stool creaking, the bell above the door, the, how are you? That isn't a question. The, take care? That isn't goodbye. The quiet? That isn't empty. It's full. It's so full. I saw silence. They saw a symphony. I saw absence. They saw presence. And I was wrong. Again. And again. And again. So I'm standing at the post office on Saturday morning, not to mail anything, just watching, because Darlene told me to. She said, if you want to understand this town, go to the post office on Saturday, not for the mail, for the people. Quote. And I stood across the street, and I watched. And I saw Mrs. Henderson checking her box, but really checking that everyone saw her, that everyone knew she was okay. The gas station man, holding a package that wasn't his, waiting for the owner to show up because it got delivered to my place by mistake. The teenager from the diner, nervous about his math test, getting a pep talk from the postmaster. The postmaster, who somehow knew he had a test. The old fella from the porch, not checking his mail at all, just sitting on the bench outside, waving at cars, being the town's heartbeat. And I realized, the post office isn't for mail. It's for checking in. It's for, I see you. It's for the web that stretches but doesn't break. It's for the widow who needs to be seen, the kid who needs a pep talk, the man who needs to return a package, the old fella who needs to wave. And I thought about the city post offices I've been to. Long lines, impatient people, security guards, metal detectors. You go in, you get your package, you leave. You don't talk. You don't wave. You don't check in. You survive. Here, you don't survive the post office. You use it. You stretch the web. You tighten the thread. You say, I'm still here, without saying it. And everyone hears you. Because in a town of 3,000, I'm still here is the most important thing you can say. That's when I stopped looking at this town as dying. I started looking at it as choosing. Choosing to keep Mrs. Henderson. Choosing to repurpose the factory. Choosing to stretch the web. Choosing to keep the old buildings. Choosing to be quiet but present. and I walked back to the diner, and I sat at stool number 7, and the man who bought me breakfast looked at me, and he didn't say, "I told you so." He just nodded, like he knew I'd figure it out, like he always knew. And I said, "You were right, the town is people." And he said, "I know." And that was it. The whole conversation, the whole lesson, the whole correction. I know. Like gravity, like the sun, like the fact that the road goes through here. I'll say it, because I've been thinking about it, and because I think it's true. Americans watching this, I know you'll say I'm romanticizing struggle. I know you'll say poverty isn't quaint. I know you'll say a town with a closed factory and empty storefronts isn't choosing. It's surviving. And you're right, on all counts. Poverty isn't quaint, struggle isn't beautiful, and some towns don't choose, they just endure. But here's what I learned. The people who live here get to decide what their town is. Not the news, not the census, not the economist with a spreadsheet. The people. And if they say, "We're not dying, we're choosing," then that's what this town is. Not because it's objectively true, but because they said it, and they live here, and they get to name their own reality. In Australia, we have towns that are actually dying. The pub closes. The school closes. The last person turns off the lights. And no one argues. No one says, "We're choosing." Because they're not. They're leaving. And the difference isn't the buildings. It's the people. It's the web. It's the choice. And if your town is choosing, if your web is stretching but not breaking, then you're not dying. You're living differently. And differently isn't wrong. It's just different. My daughter didn't ask if the town was dying. She didn't ask about the factory. She didn't ask about the empty storefronts. She asked if we could stay, because apparently that's where small-town America actually lives. Not in the buildings, not in the economy, not in the news, in the choosing, in the web that stretches, in the post office on Saturday morning, and in the man who says, "I know," when you finally figure out what he already knew, because to him it was never a lesson, it was just the weather. Next week I'm going somewhere I've been avoiding, somewhere that scares me a little, a place with no windows, no coffee, no Darlene. Just men, and flags, and stories they don't tell outsiders. And I'm going to ask them why they do it, why they keep showing up, why they keep choosing. That's next. G'day America.